Last week we began with this whole discussion over how it can be that children, babies, in this case we're talking about adults, but the question came up and needed to be answered, and that was how do we digest this concept, this idea of minors going through some form of punishment, right? Really, if you think about it, we consider, and there's a whole other discussion to have about this, what is then the category of Yisurim? And the Gemara goes on, it explains, Yisurim, the most minor of inconveniences in life technically counts as Yisurim. So, the example in the Gemara is that you put your hand into a pocket or into a purse and you take out the wrong coin. I was looking for a quarter, which buys me exactly 3 seconds of parking time on Broadway, and instead I pulled out a nickel, which buys me nothing. So it's an inconvenience, I have to put it back. If I put on a shirt and I find out that the sleeves were inside out, I have to take it off. So inconvenience is the good word. And obviously anything less convenient or more inconvenient than this would count towards my balance, my spiritual balance. This is, it's going to be applied against my avirot. So the more inconveniences I have and go through, the less my... it's basically striking the punishment that's supposed to come to me due to my avirot. Fine. According to this logic, it doesn't make any sense that a child should ever be sick. True? Kids ever get sick? Let me answer for you. The answer is yes. And they get sick between 2 and 4 a.m. That's the prime time for kids getting sick, throwing up, waiting for someone to clean it up. So children get sick. How do we digest this? Is it possible that this is something the child has to pay for, some kind of a punishment the child has coming to it? So lots of kids do silly things they deserve to be punished for, I agree. The question is punished at the hands of whom? I, the parent, have a responsibility to educate my children, and I have the right to apply certain, we'll call them consequences. That's the politically correct word for punishments today. So there have to be consequences, right? Totzot. So it's okay that I should punish a child because the child is under my care, under my responsibility, so effectively my jurisdiction. You can't physically beat the kids, you can't torture them or abuse them, but I can take away dessert, I can not let them go to play dates, go to the movies, whatever, fun walks in the park, etc. Hashem punishing someone, says the Gemara, doesn't happen, you don't get punished b'dei shamayim until the age of 20. Right? Where do we learn this from? Whence do we learn this? From the Meraglim. What does Hashem tell Moshe after the Meraglim?
That all the people older.
Right. Everyone who is 20 and up, lo yir'u et ha'aretz, right? Lo yir'u ha'anashim ha'ele et ha'aretz. The people who are 20 and up are not going, Hashem promises him, are not going to see Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, Yafeh, so what happens if I was 19 years old and 353 days on my way to 20. Actually, by the way, it's not so clear if this is 19 in your 20th year or if it's having completed 20 now being 21 or going on your 21st year, but let's assume 19 and change is not 20. So from here, the Gemara deduces that there is no such thing as onesh b'dei shamayim, even karet, until the age of 20. Those people who are given the punishment, they're not going to enter Eretz Yisrael. And from here, I understand that somebody who was 19 and a half maybe even believed the Meraglim and cried and tore his or her clothes, etc. Otherwise have been guilty and could have been punished in a Bedin or in a Sanhedrin. Nonetheless, they would be granted entry into Eretz Yisrael. And someone who was above the age of 20 and guilty of the same wouldn't go. So apparently 20 is a big deal. 20 is a milestone, it's a cutoff point. If this is the case, we know that Batidin punished from what age?
13.
13 in the case of men, 12 in the case of women. This is the age of majority. And the only exception that proves the rule is the Ben Sorer Moreh. Ben Sorer Moreh is punished before, he's a Na'ar, he's punished before he's actually an adult. We hear the expression in the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, by the way, 8th chapter if I'm not mistaken. There the Gemara says that the Ben Sorer Moreh is punished so that he should he should, literally he should die zakai, he should die somewhat innocent, meaning he's guilty of all these terrible things, but he's not yet a major who's going to be guilty of liable for a much more severe punishment. So better we should punish him now at the age of 12 and a half than let him go to the age of 13 and have potentially more grave consequences to what it is that he's doing. So we as a Beit Din, we as human beings can't punish until the age of majority, 12 or 13. And the Gemara tells us the onish b'dei shemayim, punishment at the hands of Hashem, doesn't happen until the age of 20. So how do kids get sick? Not to mention accidents, children die, unfortunately. So how do we digest this? What does this mean to us, and how do we make sense of it? To say that it happened, it's my fault that my daughter got sick. Well, maybe I didn't spray the whole house with Lysol, but the world is what it is. People get sick. Illnesses come and go. To say that it's my fault or something that I did that could cause my daughter or my son, God forbid, to be sick or even worse, then they would be punished for my irresponsibility if that's the case. Can't say it's a punishment to them for something they did. It might be just that they're entrusted into my care and I have the capacity to, the prerogative to do the right thing or to not do the right thing. And if you want to really push this concept to the hilt, then what happens in the case of a mother who abuses alcohol, crack, cigarettes, whatever, all these lovely substances that really impact the development, the physical and neurological development of an embryo, of a fetus. So just because the mother abused a substance doesn't mean the child did anything wrong in theory. At least in theory. We can't see or identify anything the child did wrong in order to merit that kind of a punishment. So these are very difficult questions. We're not talking in Iyov about little kids, just to make things clear. We're talking about adults. His kids are apparently older. And as such, liable for punishment, because there are Mefarshim that discuss this whole concept of them sitting down, enjoying themselves, being too sated to eating and drinking, etc., and indulging a little bit. We mentioned before some restaurants that we're not going to mention on tape, but I guess there's what to discuss there too. So, in the case of children, of minors, the Gemara has some discussions on why these things happen. Generally speaking, it does somehow involve the behavior of the adults. In other words, if we acknowledge the fact that it's not the kids who did something that deserve to be punished for, then it must be the behavior of the adults around them that causes them, to suffer certain consequences. So just like as a pregnant mother, if I decided to hit the crack pipe, then maybe the child that I'm carrying may not be born 100% normal and probably born addicted to crack. So too, decisions that I make after the child is born could potentially influence the child as well. The child could suffer from secondhand smoke. We can, choose to live in a neighborhood that has bad elements in it. So a neighborhood that has radon, or it's polluted. A neighborhood that has gangs. So things like this are likely to happen. They're more likely to happen in bad neighborhoods, and it would be my choice to put the child in such a situation where he or she would be exposed to these kinds of elements. So the pshat of the discussion is that we don't have a pshat-related answer to why things like this happen. The Gemara does not tell you here is why. It does give you a few ideas, a few opinions, again, relating to how we behave, we conduct ourselves as adults. It does not say, here is what kids did in order to get punished, or here is how we can explain the punishment of children, etc. Leave it to the Mekubalim to give a little bit of insight on the concept. How do you deal with this? The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim makes it kind of plain, and he says basically we can't understand these things. We don't know how or why children get punished. He rejects the Muslim concept. If you remember from last summer, he rejects the Muslim concept of suffering is good, more suffering is better. The more you suffer here, the better you have it in Olam Haba. So it's a bracha to a person that he or she should suffer. He rejects this outright. There's no way. This is a Jewish concept. We don't believe in this. We don't promote it. We don't encourage it. The goal in life is not to suffer. Suffering is secondary to the primary goal, which is to do the right thing and do more of it, do it more effectively, more efficiently, etc. And we spoke last week about Yisurim Shel Hava, Yisurim Shel Kapara. So, we try to avoid suffering wherever possible because your time can be spent more productively doing other things. But there are certain things, certain forms of damage or spiritual filth that need to be cleaned by way of purgation, be purged of negative, forbidden forms of pleasure, enjoyment, etc. So these Yisurim do what they do and it's done. It's like cleaning, physically cleaning. Once the house is clean, there's no more point in cleaning it. The house is there for you to use it. But it gets dirty while you make use of it, so you spend a certain amount of time cleaning it. Not the goal. The goal of life is not to spend the entire day cleaning, to get things done. And if cleanliness helps you get things done, so to a certain degree it's good. So the kids can't be tried as adults. It can't be that it's a punishment b'dei shamayim. It's not me administering the punishment, and the whole concept is a little bit difficult for us to tackle. Rambam says these things are mysteries left up to Hashem. There are those who proposed that thanks to the fact that there are handicapped children in the world, we learn the concept of chesed, we learn the concept of sympathy, empathizing with the families, the people in these situations, people who are handicapped, disabled. They depend on us and they require our help, and we have an obligation to help them, which is all true. It doesn't necessarily mean that anyone would wish this upon themselves, not even as a parent, to wish that someone should have a child that's disabled or disfigured in any way. So perhaps as a certain favor to humanity, we have examples that help us appreciate what it is that we have, which is great. It doesn't necessarily explain what this individual did in order to end up like that. So maybe nothing. So Hashem creates people like this too in order that we should learn from them and figure these things out. So the opinion of the Muqabbalim is not this way. Rabbeinu Nissim Migirondi was the first one who wrote about this publicly.
He was Nachman Ali's Rav.
Rabbeinu Nissim was a Talmid of Rambam.
He was the Talmid.
Yeah, there's the Rabbeinu Nissim who preceded Rabbeinu Nissim.
How that expansion explains the single case? Like
It doesn't.
I just stated as a matter of fact that it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
In other words, the only explanation that Rambam can give you is that you expect people to have a certain degree of comfort and luxury in their lives. And there's no guarantee on that. No one promised you when you were born you were going to have an easy, comfortable life. So, Baruch Hashem, you're happy, you're healthy, you're educated, you're well-adjusted. You don't have the same challenges that other people do. But no one promised anyone who comes to Olam Hazeh the same luxuries, joys, comforts that other people have. So I would ask the question a little bit differently, and we're still in the shallow water of the pshat. Why is it that so many people have it so good? Kadosh Baruch Hu, again, if I were his accountant, what do I know? But if I were doing Hashem's accounting, I would say that he wasted an awful lot of wealth and success and good looks and talent on a whole bunch of people who do nothing productive with it. And then it seems that he withheld them from people who were capable of doing productive things with it. Then you have another way of looking at the question. Is it really a blessing that such and such actress or such and such athlete, is physically capable, good looking, etc.? And these brachot, they do what exactly for these people?
Kill them at 30.
They encourage them to abuse alcohol and cocaine and to go in and out of rehab, and they die before they're 25. So this is a blessing or it's a curse? Well, I guess that depends on the context. A really mature way of looking at these things is Baruch Hashem for everything that I have, and Baruch Hashem even more for all the things that I don't have. Because if I were any smarter or wealthier or better looking than I am, I'd be in huge trouble. If Hashem thought I could deal with these brachot in any productive way, He would have given to me. Why would Hashem withhold anything positive and helpful and useful to me? So Hashem gave me exactly as much as I'm capable of dealing with. And if I were any more of the above, I probably would have crashed and burned. I would have gone to Talmud Torah. I would have, lost my my spirituality.
So what's the point of working harder then? No, working harder, but what the point? Like, let's say someone has a very good job. Huh? No, but according to you, there's no ambition.
According to me?
No, according to whatever you're saying right now.
That hurts. I thought we were friends.
No, according to what you're saying right now, that like I shouldn't give you something, that's what He believes you deserve, then why do you need to be ambitious?
So,
like, is ambition part of the Hishtadlut, or it's just like an extra?
Apparently, there are two prongs to this fork. Number one is that everyone is born with certain things. So how you look physically, the color of your hair, the color of your skin, the color of your eyes, probably determined before you actually came to Olam Hazeh, correct?
Okay.
So ambition is great, but if I work really, really hard, can I turn my hair curly? I mean, I can try. I can induce it chemically. I can use curling irons, but why does Hashem choose I should have this kind of hair? And if I choose to have curly hair, why do I have to spend 5 minutes a day for the rest of my life curling it? I mean, certain things were determined before you were born. Ambition is shayach. Ambition is only applicable. It's only part of the discussion when we go from what the potential that you have to realizing it. And some people have less potential than others, let's be honest. A few. If you've been around the block. I mean, come on, not everybody has the same intellectual capabilities, everybody has the same physical capabilities. Every time people talk to me about how come there aren't more, why are whites or blacks or Latinos disproportionately represented in the corporate world, in the finance world, and whatever else. I don't know. I'm white. Can I play basketball? No. Why is there no affirmative action? Come on. If 14% of the population of America is black or Latino, so representing the other 86% of the population, I demand to have a equal proportion of whites playing in the National Basketball Association. What does that mean? It's a meritocracy. Like you have to be a good player in order to make it. I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for this concept too. So clearly there are certain physical capabilities that not everybody's born with. Some people are bigger than others and therefore better suited for certain sports. Some people are faster, some people are smarter, some are slower. I'm not making ethnic judgments based on people's intelligence, but people will get as far as their potential carries them, assuming all things are equal. Now, there are things that you were born with that you can't change. And your ambition applies to things that you have control over, which is really, in effect, the same thing, because the amount of potential you were born with probably didn't change that much either. In other words, if you were born with a certain degree of potential intelligence, theoretically, if I could measure this, right, I'll stick a thermometer in your ear, here's how much intelligence you're capable of achieving. Now your job is to close the gap, to realize, to actuate as much of your intelligence as possible. Your ambition will help you do that. A lack of ambition and you waste your potential, like the overwhelming majority of human beings on this planet. Your ambition is not going to help you overcome things that you were born with or without. There, the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, it's a topic we can pick up some other time, but there he discusses human traits and characteristics in 3 general categories. He said there's the category of things you were born with, inclinations, potential, knack for certain things. So some people are really good. Science, math, music, humanities, spatial sense for arrangement, organization, planning, design, art. There's some very creative people. And it seems to be a knack they have at a very young age. Right? Just today I was talking to somebody about designing, fancier packaging for some of the products I produce. I don't have a head to sit there and play with different fonts and colors and sizes. I know how to produce the product. It's beyond me how to sit there and Mr. Potato Head, put this here, change that, put this on, take that off. Bigger, smaller, wider, fatter, shorter. I don't have the call. But Hashem, somebody else was gifted with this. So I pay the guy what I pay him and he does it for me. I mean, that's fine. It's probably true that no matter how hard I work at it, I'm only going to be so good at this. I can dedicate the rest of my life to work on something that I'm just not born with. Maybe I'll pick it up, maybe I won't. So the Rambam says, look, there are certain traits that you're born with that are they're innate. Literally, they're born with you. There are certain things that you can work hard in order to acquire. And there are certain things that no matter how hard you work on them, you're not going to acquire them. I don't know if it's nature versus nurture. There are people who are very punctual. And they're allergic to people who don't live like this. Just that way. There are people whose entire life revolves around punctuality. They live on the watch. They're just a walking clock. They interpret happiness and sadness and success and failure and right and wrong all through the lens of the watch. And that's fantastic. And people who are a little bit more spontaneous, a little bit more flexible. We won't mention any particular ethnic groups, but there are those who seem to excel at making moments last, at picking up spontaneous opportunities to host people that you didn't plan on having at home. You ever try bringing an unforeseen guest to one of these punctual military houses? Oh, but we have exactly 13 places set. So set another one, yalla. It's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. No, but you don't understand. We set this table 3 days ago. We're not changing the seating arrangements. Didn't mean to impose. Mechila. Come into some homes. What, you came with 3 friends? Yeah, but I have 4 more downstairs. Bring them up. Yeah, what's the big deal? 3 more potatoes. We have room for everybody. So some of these things seem to be somewhat innate. The Rambam says, no, either you're born with it or you're not. You're not going to work really hard and change it by much. Maybe you can cover it up. You can try to soften it a bit. But this is your nishmatic inclination. Only so much you can do about that. There are certain things you have to acquire. So I don't know. Some people might be a little bit more predisposed to generosity, and some people you can practice. You can get good at it. Giving tzedakah, however much, whatever percentage you can afford to give, you'll get different answers to that question. How much can I afford? I can afford as much as I want to afford. I can reduce my expenditures in other categories to make more room for tzedakah, for chesed, etc. Or that's my comfort level. I don't feel comfortable doing that. That's fine. And there are things that are just opposite to you that you just can't do.
So, okay, I have a weird/awkward question.
I love weird/awkward questions.
Okay. Imagine a girl,
career is built on these things.
Imagine a guy was born with not a nice nose. It just wasn't nice. Okay, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them. Comes a time when start dating, or shiluchim.
We state for the record that everyone here has a fantastic nose. This is all the noses I have ever seen.
No, but no one is dramatic, I would say, in the room.
Right.
There's some people that really were born.
And if there was, you would say.
Terrible nose. No, I wouldn't say, but I want to ask a question. My question is, if a person goes through plastic surgery to change their nose, does it mean they go against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or should they say to themselves, listen, that's what Hashem gave me, that's what I should deal with?
Excellent question. I once asked this question. It was a fascinating question in Emunah. So, a question that I had. I was approached by a young woman.
By your nose.
Yeah. I am horrified by the nose. It's funny, all this talk about Jewish noses. Everyone in my family on all sides. Never seen such a thing. That is what it is. That we heard growing up that there was such a thing. Okay. So, I was once approached by a young woman who had made some mistakes in the past. Whatever, she's a Balat Teshuvah. And she was really horrified by some of the things she had done. This particular case, nothing is exceptionally crazy, but she wasn't observant and she went to college. That's kind of draw conclusions. So, Rav Yashiv has a tshuva on that. I didn't make that up. Anyway, she was dating a guy who was very observant and very sensitive to certain things, and he wasn't really built for this concept of a woman who maybe wasn't always observant, and now she is. So you would say, Baruch Hashem, now she's observant. I mean, take her for what she is. She's made effort. She's come a very long way. Lovely, wonderful, great midot, etc. And some guys are a little bit hung up about certain things. Fine. So I spoke to a colleague of mine who does a tremendous amount of work in Kiruv, in outreach. And I told him, I said, I feel terrible, but this girl is making herself an absolute wreck, because it's inevitable that she has this discussion with this guy, and it's going to come up, and it's going to be a problem. So he said, the only way to look at situations like this is that this is not the guy for her. The guy who's going to make a big deal about this is not the guy for her. She doesn't want him, and he doesn't want her, and she doesn't want to be married to a guy who's not going to be happy with her. This is just the most clear-cut, obvious sign that she found the wrong guy. And it was inevitable that it fell apart, inevitable that the relationship couldn't continue. And it didn't come as a surprise to me, but the easiest way to explain it is whatever was. This is nothing. So going back to the nose issue. Someone's born with a horrible nose, like a god-awful rhinoceros deal. You can look at it and you can say, well, my job is to conform to what many or most other people expect to see in a nose. So I have to change myself, and I have to adjust myself, and I have to go through the pain and the financial expenditure of making myself look different from what I am. Or, and here's the hopefully happier, more desirable scenario, or I just look for a guy or a girl who's not obsessive compulsive about the nose that he or she is expecting in a potential soulmate. Barring anything monstrously wrong with the nose, I mean, there are people out there who don't care that much about what a nose looks like. You happen to find someone who did, so maybe this is not the person for you. You can look at it either way.
It's a very fine line.
Hashem created you such that you have
I
certain...
asked a different question. I didn't ask in regard to the guy. I asked about
even
the
for
person
yourself.
themselves.
Like, what did this
Like
person
the girl
do?
herself, she knows she can't. Or the guy.
You're assuming this is a girl. Okay, no.
Whatever. Because I think it's harder for a girl than for a guy.
If I may propose, the way I posed the question before was basically, where does Hishtadlut end and where does Bitahhon and Hashem begin? Like, you can't leave everything up to Hashem.
Applies.
And you can't do everything
Given this particular example.
Or do you say the rest is in the hands of God?
Given this particular example,
I
don't see it as an exception. You can choose to invest a certain amount of Hishtadlut in improving the way that your nose looks surgically, and they call it rhinoplasty, right? Rhinoceros, yeah. So interestingly enough, you have the option at your disposal of surgical intervention. So you can change the way that you appear, not the way Hashem made you, but you can change the way that you look from now on. You could do much more drastic things with your body today than you used to be able to. Gender reassignment. I mean, it's an interesting question. So, and then halachically speaking, how do you hold from such a creature? This is. I wrote a get once for a guy in Midtown who was he was like a week or two before he had that surgery. I guess the marriage didn't work out. It was his way of dealing with it. So you can decide to make Hishtadlut, and you interpret Hishtadlut as very weird again. He wanted his daughter there. You can decide to invest Hishtadlut in physically changing the way that you look, or you can be in touch with a rabbi who hopefully a competent, reasonable rabbi, who might say maybe your Hishtadlut is in accepting it. There's an awful... That's even more Hishtadlut than surgically changing it. It's harder work to accept it. Just so you know, it never stopped anyone, French for that matter, from reaching fame and fortune. If you look at some of the pictures, the portraits that were drawn of some of the French aristocracy, musicians and artists, these people had pretty horrible noses. You've been through the Louvre? I mean, there are some awful paintings. Now, it doesn't stop. So some people worked on their self-confidence and accepted things and acknowledged them and were willing to move on. And that's, if you ask me, almost infinitely harder than physically, surgically changing. So you're going to say, where's my Hishtadlut? And that's your Hishtadlut. If someone comes to me and tells me, look, Rabbi, it's impossible, I hate my nose, and I'm going to throw myself out of a building if I don't get it fixed. Okay, get it fixed. You decided before you came to see me. If it's someone who has a little bit more of a spiritual inclination, this discussion can and should be had. I don't see anything wrong with it. And by the way, another classic example of this, how many kids should you have? Depends who you ask. Someone who's obsessive compulsive about planning and counting and financing. And okay, people like this are not cut out for a large family. Even if they had more kids than they otherwise wanted to or planned to, then they'll probably be nervous wrecks. Some people are a little bit more flexible that way, and life is okay. So it's one of these questions that kind of, it's a personal thing. It'll change from person to person. There are those who will feel more comfortable doing things a certain way. There are those who feel more comfortable accepting whatever is and making the best of it. So if you ask me about a girl, Rabbi Yosef was asked this question, by the way. He wrote a psak that there's no halachic isur. Probably it's permissible. He wouldn't encourage and say you have to go change your nose. But okay, so if a girl feels like this is assuming it's a girl, because men have crazy obsessions when it comes to these things, assuming unreasonable and irrational ones, but that's beside the point. Assuming that she identifies this as the reason she's not getting married, and she feels like this is preventing her from taking the next step. So he says, not halachically asur, it wouldn't be considered the potential mutilation of her body, because in the end the result would theoretically be more positive. Again, barring like a really bad accident. I had a discussion recently with someone who suffers from a terrible skin cancer, and his whole face is disfigured. I understand that. Actually, today I had a discussion about this. If it's halachically permissible and if it makes sense to try to save some money and have reconstructive surgery, the answer is yes. A situation like that, absolutely. But a bad burn or a bad accident is one thing. Not liking the way that you look, and on the barsof, you can go with this from here to LA, where all the best plastic surgeons in the world happen to be. It's a cultural thing. The location of these plastic surgeons and their clinics is a pretty good indication of that. It's a cultural thing. There are people who are obsessive compulsive about the way they look, And if you want to be a model or an actor or an actress, or you feel like this is holding you back from making more progress in business, then you've answered the question. You've already made a decision. You've already come to your own conclusion, and so the solution is simple. Again, a good rabbi would be able to recognize this and say, well, nothing for me to do here. I mean, all I can tell you is, you already made your mind up, you're coming to me for a seal of approval, there is room for this in halakha. You ask me spiritually what I would recommend, I'd recommend something else. But again, 99 out of 100 cases, you'd hope it wouldn't be necessary. There really is no end to this. You can nitpick at everything. People do this, Upper West Side. I mean, people do. Yeah, she's a nice girl, but she's too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too light, too dark, too medium, too average, her hair is too straight, too curly, there's no end to the nitpicking. None of it. And the saddest thing of all of this is I can sit there, listen to a conversation, and say to myself, I didn't hear one nishmatic insight. Your neshama is drowning, absolutely drowning and screaming for help, because you can't see past the superficial physical look. You don't deserve someone with a really bright, beautiful, happy, content neshama. You deserve to be as miserable as you are because you're so nitpicky. Nothing will ever satisfy you. I wouldn't waste my daughter on a guy like that. Find me a guy who loves her for who she is, for what she does, for how she conducts herself, for what she aspires to be. It's fantastic. I'm like a good chatan. Yeah, I care what his nose looks like, what color his skin is. Anyway, I'll tell you a funny story about that. When I was learning at Nikur of Giyat, we were taking apart a lamb, and we were right outside of this kollel. Yeshiva guys, 18 to 25 or 26 in this particular place. So, right, we're sitting there doing our thing. One guy notices, a whole bunch of calls all of his friends, look, we're taking apart a lamb. Okay, I'm already tired, we're doing work. So one of the guys comes up to Giyat, says, oh, are you Rav Yehuda Giyat? Says, yeah. So, oh, I learned with your son, not with your son, with your future son-in-law. His daughter had just gotten engaged when I got there, literally like a week before I came. So he says, oh, yes. So I learned with the guy who just got engaged to your daughter. So Rav Giyat puts down his knife, right? He doesn't put down his knife for anything. Puts down his knife, he says, and this guy he just got engaged to my daughter, what's he like? What can you tell me about him? He says, well, you probably know better. He says, no. Does he have anawa? That's what he said. Does he have humility? So the guy says, yeah, he learns nicely. He says, I don't care how he learns. Does the guy have anawa? That's it. He has humility. He's not like he can acknowledge that he makes mistakes. He can admit that he's wrong here and there. He said, if he has anawa, it'll succeed. And if he doesn't, it'll fail. Just like that. Talking about his own daughter. Like, I don't know this guy from home. My daughter just came home, told me that she's getting engaged to this guy. Fantastic. What is midot like? I don't care what he looks like. What is he? Don't care where he learned. Don't get anything. That's what he has. Midot. Not even all midot. Just one particular midah. Anava. He has it. Great. He doesn't have it. Waste of time.
Yeah, but the books of Musaf say that's like the midah to.
So to what extent has he managed to repair his pride and work on acquiring humility? So, all great questions. At the end of the day, honestly, this example that you gave is probably the best of examples that you could have given because it proves the point. It's not an exception to the rule. What you call hishtadlut, I call laziness. Where you might want, and not you personally, I'm saying, but you, the other person, my opponent, what someone would call an obligation, a responsibility that you have to fix or change or adjust something, I would say you do have to fix and change and adjust something. The way that you look at yourself, the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you present yourself, the degree of confidence with which you can communicate with other people, you're going to get crushed. You will be a failure if that's what you think about yourself. By the way, that's exactly what I wanted to do today, but I don't think we're going to get to it. We'll do it next week. There's a pasuk literally that just says what I told you, just not so clearly. Meaning it's there, you just have to understand what it means. So, going back to the children concept. The Rabbeinu Nissim writes this in Drasha for Rosh Hashanah, of all places. And he basically says that he received a very holy and very special and very secret tradition from his father, going back to his the Rabbanim of his Rabbanim, etc., all the way up to Moshe, that it's possible that some of the blessings and punishments that you receive in Olam Hazeh are not necessarily the direct consequence of something that you said or did or didn't say or didn't do here in Olam Hazeh. In other words, it's possible that you have a great, happy, successful life, right? I would say you're an actor or an actress, but their lives are miserable, so that's a terrible example. But let's say that you happen to be successful, you have a decent parnasah, you're physically healthy, you are physically normal looking, and this may have absolutely nothing to do with how you conduct yourself now. What may it stem from, right? Whence might these brachot come? So the answer is, this may be the result of how you conducted yourself the last time you were here. He introduces the whole concept of Gilgulim, of reincarnations. Not flying on magic carpets, not breathing fire. Reincarnations. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has infinite patience and infinite mercy. And they are manifest in His giving you, more often than not, the possibility of coming back and fixing and correcting certain things. And it's a tremendous secret that He refuses to discuss too much in great detail, but it answers quite a bit of these questions. And being part of our tradition, ultimately a Sephardi community, Rabbi Avidan Elkin was one of the greats of the what they call the Golden Age in Spain. So he says, yes, you should know this. You should know that this explains why there are certain situations in which we have difficulty explaining how a punishment fits a crime, or how someone who does something good might ultimately, suffer, lead a difficult life. Why people who do bad and evil sometimes prosper. I'll tell you, there's absolutely nothing to do, not necessarily anyway, with what they're doing right now. It would almost be exceptional that Hashem should intervene quickly on the spot and give you a reward for doing good or punishment for doing bad. So if I keep one Shabbat and I walk outside, like it should be raining gumdrops and jelly beans. Why? Where's the money? Show me, cut me a check. It's a very childish way of looking at things. There's no free will. If rewards and punishments come right away, so I decided that I'm going to say something disrespectful to my father, and then I walk outside and I get hit by a falling tree. So every time someone does something disrespectful, they get clobbered, then I guess they'll make the connection and stop doing it, but not for the right reasons, not because they appreciate parents, respect, investment, patience, education, frustration, what your parents invested in you. You just stop doing it so you don't get punished. So the same thing goes for the mitzvot. If I put on tefillin, I get a check at the end of tefillah, it's fantastic. I could live here and not have to go to work. And it doesn't work that way. You put on tefillin, that means you might be waking up early or sleeping a little bit less or getting to work a little bit later. I mean, it's a choice that you have to make. That's what makes it beautiful, because this is a sacrifice. You're taking from time that you could be spending elsewhere, and you're spending it on Hashem. That's a fantastically adult thing to do. This is you're living your life based on different rules from 99.98% of the rest of the world. That's a fantastic thing. Not easy, but the choice is a real choice. The sacrifice is a real sacrifice, and don't even expect rewards or punishments to come with any degree of immediacy. They'll come eventually. Hopefully it'll come this time, and maybe not. That's okay. Now, when punishments for certain things happen, or inconveniences, or difficulties, or challenges, so say this Rabbeinu Nisim, this is the Zohar Kadosh, etc. Accept it. Accept it, because you don't necessarily know. First of all, assume you deserve it. It's probably true. Probably true. It's definitely true. You may not appreciate why, but you have to assume that Hashem is a better accountant than you are. You probably cook the books, accountingly speaking. You probably magnify your mitzvot and downplay your avirot. We all do this. You know exactly what the value of a mitzvah or the value of an avirah is. Well, no. So maybe it's something you did, maybe it's something you said. It may not necessarily have been from this particular time around. That's the only answer. Rav Sabato gives a long drasha about this. That's the only answer that we have for these questions. And it's not an answer for public consumption. I'm sure the Gemara doesn't even talk about it so openly. Why would a child be born a certain way? The classical answer was Rahman Itzlan. It's terrible. It's a great nisayon. It's a great challenge. What can we learn from it? What can we do to help? How can we, overcome our apathy and indifference? How can we become more spiritual and grow through this thing, through this challenge? Doesn't answer the question for the child, back to David's point, and the answer is no, it doesn't answer the question for the child. How does a child who's not yet of the age of majority, World War II, by the way, the Shoah, how many people stopped keeping mitzvot because, I saw a child that was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, Hashem Yerachim. So what did the child do? What child say? So the child did nothing. You ask me why Hashem sent certain neshamot to certain bodies at certain times and why they only reached a certain age. You're asking me questions I can't answer. Do I believe that Hashem wants these things to happen, or that this is ideal, or that these kids were, born in order to suffer? Well, they didn't have much of a free will, a free choice in the matter. It's not like if you asked them, would you like to go this way or that way? They said, that's the way I want to go at this time, at this place. But we have a very fundamental belief. The Rambam says, he quotes us in Moreh Nevuchim, Emunah ve'ena tzaddik ve'asher hu. Pasuk in Ha'azinu. Everything Hashem does is perfectly righteous, perfectly just. You just don't get it. we'd be humiliated to see what the reasons for these things are. So a little bit of non-physical, metaphysical insight on this topic is that there's no answer to these questions, just so you know, because tonight happens to be the Shloshim. Rav Avidan Yosef once spoke about this in one of his shiurim Motzei Shabbat, and the media lambasted him for doing it. What he said was perfectly accurate. Maybe, the timing or the context was a little bit difficult for some people to understand. He was asked this question of how come children suffer? Why did children die during the war? I think it was right around Yom HaShoah that he mentioned this. So he said, there's no way that kids could be punished for it. Nothing a child did at the age of 2, 3, 4 would merit any kind of punishment, let alone death. He said, the only answer we can give is that these are gilgulim, these are reincarnated neshamot who probably merited some kind of a punishment previously. It kind of fits in with the historical context because the overwhelming majority of Jews at this particular time in Europe had either left Judaism, not the kids themselves, but there was assimilation going on for several generations, already from the 1700s in Germany, the surrounding countries. So, there were people who got up with their own two hands and stopped circumcising their kids and married non-Jews and converted for the purpose of social advancement or more financial opportunity. The terrible thing, they chose to stop sending their kids to Jewish schools and to stop investing in their own spiritual identity, stop observing the mitzvot, stop keeping Shabbat. I don't know. Not for me to say why any particular child, God forbid, suffered this way. I was about to point that out very adamantly. If already we bring up this topic for conversation, you have to be a prophet to say that's why this particular woman on that particular day, this particular time, etc., met such and such a fate. All we can say is that there is such a possibility. It makes the concept less undigestible, and we have to leave room for hashgacha and our emunah to say, there are things that we're not going to be able to understand, but there are principles and there are concepts that make this a little bit less difficult to deal with. That's it. Assume that everything that happens to you is for the better, because it is. Even punishments don't happen for no reason, though you may not know what the reason is, doesn't mean that there isn't one. And how and why things play out the way that they do may span more than one chapter of your understanding. So we'll put the bookmarking here. Next week I have something very related to this. I wanted to draw from the first parak of... it's actually from the second parak. Second parak of Iyov. Take a quick 2-minute break. Have dessert if you already have pizza, and we can... on to halacha.